question is, do I be myself or do I talk my shit?
In March 2020, the New York Knicks were worth $4.6 billion and had the worst record in basketball. 6 years later, they were champions and worth $10.1 billion. Leon Rose didn't rebuild the team the way front offices are supposed to. He treated Madison Square Garden like a takeover target and used every connection he had built as a super agent to assemble a roster nobody else could copy. This is the hidden $6 billion heist of the New York Knicks. For 2 decades, the Knicks sat as the NBA's most expensive punchline. They burned through coaches like disposable lighters, handed out terrible contracts to players who didn't fit, and turned draft night into a yearly disaster. In 2020, Forbes ranked them the most valuable franchise in basketball at $4.6 billion. They also finished with the worst record in the league. That gap between price and performance was more than embarrassing. It was a market inefficiency that had been waiting 20 years for someone to finally exploit. The new national media rights deal was ready to flood the league with money, and every franchise was about to get richer. But the Knicks weren't floating with the tide at all. They were dead weight. Other teams improved their product and their balance sheets, while the Knicks cashed checks for Madison Square Garden's real estate and corporate suites. James Dolan turned a basketball team into a passive income stream for his entertainment company, and the product on the floor barely mattered because the market was New York City. Fans kept showing up, sponsors kept writing checks, and the team kept losing anyway. But in March 2020, a man who had never run an NBA front office took over basketball operations. He didn't look at the Knicks and see a broken sports team. He saw a $4.6 billion asset that had been mismanaged for 20 years, and he knew exactly how to fix it. Leon Rose spent 20 years among the most powerful agents in basketball at Creative Artists Agency. He negotiated contracts for stars, built relationship maps across the league, and understood player incentives better than almost any traditional executive. When the Knicks hired him as president of basketball operations that same March, the move confused a lot of people. Teams don't normally hand the keys to an agent. Agents represent players against teams, but Rose wasn't any ordinary agent. He had spent 2 decades learning where the money moved, who controlled it, and how to structure deals that made everyone feel like they won. The first major play hit in the summer of 2022. The Knicks signed Jalen Brunson to a 4-year deal worth $104 million. On the surface, that looked like a standard free agent signing, but Brunson wasn't a standard player. He was a rising point guard who had just helped Dallas reach the Western Conference Finals, and $104 million was already below what his trajectory suggested he'd be worth. Rose didn't overpay for a star because he paid market rate for a player he believed was about to become a bargain. In a league where the Knicks usually threw money at problems and turned them into bigger disasters, this deal felt almost suspiciously smart. Nobody realized at the time that this contract served as only the opening move. Brunson's 2022 deal was team-friendly from day one, but the real play would come 2 years later. Rose wasn't collecting talent the way other front offices do. He was running a different playbook entirely, and the next chapter would involve 3 players who already knew each other's games better than any scouting report could teach. Rose's second move was something no spreadsheet could predict. He began assembling a core of players who had already won together. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges had all played at Villanova, and 2 of those teams won national championships in 2016 and 2018. They didn't need to learn how to trust each other because they already had. If you look at it like a business deal, Rose wasn't hiring individual employees and hoping the culture worked. He was acquiring a pre-vetted team that had already built championship chemistry. That kind of certainty is rare in the NBA, and Rose paid a premium for it because he knew it would save money and wins down the line. The Bridges trade in 2024 proved how committed Rose was to this strategy. The Knicks gave up multiple first-round picks to bring him to New York, a massive bet that only made sense because the core already knew how to play together. You don't trade that many future assets for a player who might fit. You do it when you know he will. because he's already played with your best player for 2 years of college basketball. What most fans never saw was how Rose's CAA background created another layer of alignment that traditional front offices couldn't match. The Knicks roster included nearly $130 million in salary flowing to CAA-represented players, which meant the agency and the team were pulling in the same direction on contract structures, trade timing, and long-term planning. This wasn't a conspiracy or a shadow government running the team. It was the natural result of network effects in a league built on relationships. Rose understood that basketball is a business of trust, and he used 20 years of trust building to construct a roster that functioned like a single unit rather than a collection of mercenaries. The score: in July 2024, Jalen Brunson sat down with a pen and a choice that would change NBA economics. He signed a 4-year extension worth $156.5 million. If he had waited one more year, he could have signed a projected 5-year max deal worth roughly $269 million. That means he left $113 million in guaranteed money on the table. In a league where superstars squeeze every dollar they can from their teams, this decision was almost unheard of. Brunson wasn't being naive though, and Rose wasn't manipulating him. They both understood something that other teams were slow to figure out. Brunson's discount became a master key that unlocked the entire salary cap structure for the Knicks. Under the new collective bargaining agreement, teams that cross the second luxury tax apron lose access to the mid-level exception, can't aggregate salaries and trades, and get locked out of using cash and deals. These aren't small penalties. They're designed to make it nearly impossible for expensive rosters to improve. Because Brunson's number stayed below what a max contract would have cost, the Knicks slipped under that line. That single maneuver opened the door for everything else. Paying OG Anunoby $212.5 million became possible without triggering the league's harshest penalties. The Knicks could match salaries in the Bridges trade without losing flexibility. They absorbed mid-tier contracts from other teams and used their future draft picks as actual assets instead of throw-ins to make the math work. The CBA was designed to prevent super teams from forming by making it prohibitively expensive to stack stars on the same roster. Brunson and Rose found a way to stack them anyway, by having the team's best player voluntarily take less than the market would bear. ESPN called the move largely unprecedented, and the contract details prove they were right. Top-tier players don't leave 9 figures on the table to help their front office manage the cap. But Brunson did, and that sacrifice did more than help the Knicks build a contender. It gave them a structural advantage that no other team in the league could replicate, without finding a superstar willing to do the same thing. Good luck with that. The Knicks had turned the league's own rulebook into a blueprint for how to beat it. The Knicks won the title that spring. Madison Square Garden sold out every playoff game at prices that would make a concert promoter blush. National television ratings in New York spiked well above normal NBA Finals numbers, and sponsors lined up to attach their brands to a team that had finally become cool again. The championship settled one question about whether the strategy could work on the court. The real scoreboard nobody was watching, though, sat on Wall Street. In 2020, Forbes valued the Knicks at $4.6 billion, despite their terrible record. By 2026, CNBC and Yahoo Sports both placed them at $10.1 billion, making them one of only 3 NBA franchises to cross the $10 billion threshold. The Warriors and Lakers joined them, but those teams had already been winning. The Knicks had been losing for 2 decades and still managed to close the gap. Riding the wave of a booming league and a massive new television deal only explains part of the jump. They extracted billions in enterprise value from a broken asset by fixing what actually happened on the court and turning a dysfunctional organization into a championship business. The heist math is almost too clean to believe. A $5.5 billion valuation increase in 6 years, with a measurable chunk of that delta coming directly from basketball operations rather than pure market inflation. Madison Square Garden stock reacted to every Brunson extension headline and every deep playoff run. The company even began exploring a spin-off that would separate the Knicks and Rangers from the broader entertainment business. a move that could unlock even more value for shareholders by trading at a price that reflected the actual worth of the teams instead of a bundled discount. Rose built more than a champion. He engineered a liquidity event that turned a punchline into among the most valuable sports properties on earth. The Knicks proved that in a league obsessed with max contracts, the biggest competitive edge is a star willing to leave 9 figures on the table in a front office built like an investment bank. Rose turned a $4.6 billion joke into a $10.1 billion champion by treating the NBA like a takeover target. Subscribe for more stories about the money, power, and backroom deals that actually run professional sports.